Welcome. I'm Carol Bob, and I welcome you on behalf of the Syracuse Peace Council to this talk tonight. And personally, I'm really thrilled to see you all here. This is awesome. Thank you for being here, because you're in for a real treat tonight. I'm going to just first talk a little bit about how the evening's going to progress. We'll have a few introductory comments, and then Phyllis will speak for about 45 minutes. We'll talk about some upcoming events that we're very excited about and ways that you can participate. And then there will be a question and answer with her afterwards. And for people who haven't been here before, bathrooms are up the stairs to the right. And also, if you haven't noticed them yet, there's cookies and tea and coffee over there.
Cheryl?
Yes?
There are also bathrooms just through these doors and then to your left.
Thank you. There are also bathrooms on this floor, through these doors to the left. Thank you. Anything else I should know about this building that I don't know that we can share?
There's an elevator to the right.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. There's an elevator out that way for people who need to use that or want to use that. And it'll take you out and an exit on that side. Anything else? It's always good to get people sharing their information, so thank you. One of the reasons why I'm just so thrilled to see so many people is the question has been, what will happen when Trump starts doing even more egregious things than have happened under all these previous administrations? Will people notice? Will people want to sit up? Will people want to do something, especially around issues of foreign policy, because so much has been focused on domestic policy? And I can see here that the answer is yes. That there are people, and many more people, who understand the linkages between the domestic and the foreign policy. Because the linkages are very intense, and we need to put all these pieces together and work all together, and we can be a very, very strong movement. So I'd like to introduce Phyllis. And Phyllis Bennis has been here. She came yesterday and is a delight and a really interesting person, as well as the complete package, because she is author, analyst, and activist. And there aren't that many people who put that whole package together. So she can talk analysis as well as talk about how we as individuals working together in groups can go further with that and do something with it. So she has been a writer, analyst, and activist on Middle East and UN issues for decades. She's the director of the new Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies, which is a DC-based think tank. She's also a fellow of the Transnational Institute in Amsterdam. And in 2001, she helped found and remains on the steering committee of the U.S. campaign to end Israeli occupation. She's worked closely with United for Peace and Justice Anti-War Coalition, chairs the UN-based International Coordinating Network on Palestine, and has recently authored several articles relating to Trump's foreign policy, which we've been pumping out there over the listservs. And I hope some of you have had a chance to read those. And if you're interested in being part of those listservs, on the tables, there's places to sign up for them. She's the author of 8 books, 2 of which are here. And the 2 here, they're $15 each, and they're available on both of the tables. One is Understanding ISIS and the New Global War on Terror. And, you can imagine reading this, right? And Understanding the Palestinian-Israeli Conflict, also. Very highly, highly readable and informative. So please welcome author, analyst, and fellow activist in the movement for justice, Phyllis Bennis.
Let's see how that works. Does that work? Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Glad to see you all here. This is kind of amazing to see you all. I've been in Syracuse and Ithaca for the last, not quite 48 hours yet, but we're getting close. No, it is about 48 hours, I guess. And I've met an amazing array of people working on an incredible diversity of issues, which is very exciting. And I'm glad to see you all here tonight to talk about what's happening in foreign policy questions and what we might want to do about it. I want to thank the Syracuse Peace Council for organizing these events, for organizing for so many years. I've known of the Syracuse Peace Council, I think, as long as I've been a political activist, which goes back to Vietnam. So I want to thank the Peace Council for doing that amazing work. I also would thank and remember that we are standing on land that once belonged to others in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. This is, I think, an important thing for us to always be keeping in mind, particularly as we work through what solidarity with Standing Rock looks like. It means going back to what our nation's history has been, both the bad and the good. So, with that, let's talk a little bit about these times that we're in. We're in pretty hard times. And it's not likely, I don't think, to get any better anytime soon. We have a lot of work ahead and a lot of challenges to deal with. Welcome everybody in the back. Let's wait for just a second while everybody gets a chance to get seats, get chairs. We have a lot of chairs. This is great. I love being in a place where there's lots of extra chairs. And I love meeting them. That's the best part. But it is hard to focus when there's lots of people moving forward. So we'll just wait a second. Okay, that's good enough. The rest of you can just, sit where you are. And I've got to say, I've been speaking at campuses the last couple of days. I've been at Syracuse University and Ithaca College, is that right? And Cornell. And students never want to sit in the front row. This is like a thing. I think they're afraid that there's going to be a test. I'm going to call on them first. So thank you all for sitting in the front row. Very good. So now, you don't get a prize. You don't get a test, but you don't get a prize. We're seeing right now, in these just last few days, these last couple of weeks, an extraordinary level of new escalations. These are not new wars. These are not new wars. But they are serious and dangerous escalations of existing wars that have been going on for a long time. We're hearing about the mother of all bombs, as they like to call it, being dropped on Afghanistan, one of the poorest countries in the world. We're hearing about the U.S. now bombing Syria. And there was, appropriately, outrage and a huge level of press attention to that bombing in the U.S. That was appropriate. It was an outrage. It was a violation of both domestic and international law, which I'll get to in a minute. But it was important for us also to remember that while it was very appropriate and necessary to keep a focus and keep up the outrage on that bombing by the U.S., it was not the first time the U.S. had bombed Syria. The U.S. had been bombing Syria since 2014. The difference was that in 2014 and until that bombing 2 weeks ago, the excuse was, we're bombing ISIS. Well, the problem was ISIS, at this point, it's still true. It's somewhat less true now, but it's still true. ISIS has taken over territory and is controlling populations with enormous brutality. And that means when you bomb ISIS, you bomb people. You bomb civilians. And that happened this time as well. That was not new and different. It was new and different only in the U.S. acknowledgement that this time the target was the Syrian government's military and not ISIS militants hiding somewhere. We're also hearing about new threats against North Korea. We were told that the Carl Vinson aircraft carrier with its carrier group was sailing to North Korea, picked up by the press around the world and escalating an enormously dangerous conflict, an enormously dangerous potential for a new Korean war that could include a nuclear The danger could hardly be overstated. And then we found out, oops, the Carl Vinson wasn't actually heading towards North Korea at all. What a surprise. A week later, we were told that it was heading south and not north. It was going through next to Java in Indonesia, 1,000 miles south. What is going on? What is this policy? We have been hearing about the bombing in Mosul, in Iraq, where the US killed, we still don't know exactly how many dozens of civilians. We don't know how many yet. But we know that the US has continued wars for many years now. The policy we're hearing talked about is called America First. And I think some of us may have thought during the campaign that when Trump talked about isolationism, talked about we don't need these wars abroad, there's nothing in it for us, we don't belong there, there was a bit of relief that as bad as his domestic policies clearly were going to be, that maybe his foreign policy would not be quite as bad as the last several presidents. Unfortunately, it turns out that his definitions of isolationism seem to be limited to cultural engagement, economic investment, foreign aid, a few other things, but not the military. Anyone who thought that Trump's isolationism includes military retreat had better think again. That's the lesson of the last couple of weeks. There's not much policy there. America First appears to mean military first, more than anything else. It means aggressive, unilateral militarism as something to be proud of. Because after all, in this country, we are still the dominant power in the world, unchallengeable militarily, when we are no longer unchallengeable in terms of cultural influence, economic clout, diplomatic power. In all of those arenas, we have lost power. The empire exists, but it is a losing empire that is losing power. The one arena where it is not losing power is the military. So what a surprise that we have a cabinet now that is made up of generals and gazillionaires. And when you ask a general what to do about X problem, it's like asking a hammer what to do about a problem. Everything looks like a nail. When you're a general, everything needs a military solution. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. Because they don't think about consequences. They may think about the consequence for their military. So sometimes they will fight back against an effort to send more ground troops or to send US manned bombers somewhere when it could be drones instead, because the consequences will be felt from their soldiers. They're not interested in the consequences of people under the bombs, under the drones, in the crosshairs of the rifles of the special forces. Those are the people doing the dying. But that's not their concern. Their concern is for their military and the expansion of US power. And so what happens is we see these acts of violence that are directly violating domestic and international law. What does that mean? It means if we're talking, for example, about the Syria strike two weeks ago, that strike violated domestic law because domestic law, the Second Amendment of the second article of the Constitution says that only Congress can declare war and not the President. And the answer is, well, Congress hasn't declared war since World War II, and we've been at war pretty nonstop since then, so what's the problem? What's different? Nothing's different. It's just still illegal. It's still bad. The fact that they do it over and over and over again doesn't make it legal. It just means more people have died illegally. Saying that something is legal does not mean it's legitimate, useful, correct, moral, or right. But there's also a difference when something is also illegal. This was illegal. Now some people will say, well, what about the War Powers Act? The War Powers Act says that the commander-in-chief can send troops into harm's way or can send bombers or whatever for only up to 60 days as long as he notifies Congress within 48 hours. And Trump did that with 6 hours to spare. He sent Congress a message. I just bombed Syria. Well, that's true. Those are two of the requirements of the War Powers Act. But there's another requirement that comes first that says the president cannot use military force unless one of three qualifications are met. Number one, if Congress declares war. Well, they didn't. Number two, if Congress has authorized a war through an authorization of military force. Well, they didn't. And number three, if we have been attacked, our land, our territory, or our soldiers. Well, we were not. Someone was attacked in Syria, brutally, with chemical weapons. We don't know yet who it was who launched those weapons, and we don't even know yet what the weapons were. We know that people died horribly. But that did not give the president the right to bomb Syria. Revenge is not a legal use of military force. It wasn't in Afghanistan, it wasn't in Iraq, it wasn't in Syria, it wasn't in Libya, Somalia, or any of the other myriad of wars that the US has waged since World War II. It was illegal. It was also illegal under international law. The ultimate international law when it comes to questions of war and peace is the UN Charter. The UN Charter is very vague about a lot of things. It's not very clear about all kinds of things. But it's very clear about one thing, which is when is it legal to use force? When is a country okay using military force? And it's very small opportunities, very small windows. One, if the Security Council votes to authorize it. Well, guess what? They didn't. Two, a country has the right of immediate self-defense if, first qualification, if it has been attacked. Well, we weren't. And only until, second qualification, the Security Council can meet to decide what to do. Well, they did, and they didn't decide on the US going to bomb. So the US has once again violated international law. That means it's a war crime. Once again. Now this, again, is not new. These war crimes have been committed over and over again by President Bush and his predecessors, by President Obama and his predecessors, and by President Trump on the first day he took office, when the bombing by drones in Afghanistan and Iraq continued. This is not new, but these are major escalations that are incredibly dangerous, both for the people right now that are dying under these attacks, and for what they could lead to. You know, we talk, sometimes we hear generals and others saying, this is going to be a limited war, this is just a limited strike. And they may in fact intend that. The problem is they don't speak for the other side. You know, so far, we've been lucky in Syria, after that bombing, that neither the Syrian military, nor the Russian military, who had troops right there, nor the Iranian military, who didn't have troops but had some other forces that they support nearby, none of them have decided that this was something more than a one-off attack and needed to be responded to militarily to what? Send a message. The US apparently now uses bombs to send messages. They apparently haven't heard of Facebook. You know, how do you send a message? You send a bomb. We've been lucky. The other side has been acting like the adults in the room. Our government, not so much. How much do we want to depend on that continuing? It's not something I want to bet the store on. We're seeing right now, along with these wars that are escalating, we're seeing new threats by the US against Iran. A day ago, 2 days ago now, the president went to Congress and admitted, clearly grudgingly, that Iran is indeed, as we've known all along, abiding by the terms of the nuclear deal. Thankfully. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. But in that same message to Congress, the president went on to say, but we don't like what Iran is doing in the region. We think Iran is still the world's biggest supporter of state-sponsored terrorism, so we better talk about increasing the sanctions. Oh, that's a really good idea. That's going to go over real well in Tehran. That's going to really encourage them, right, to continue abiding by the terms of the treaty. They're going into elections. Their hardliners love this. The hardliners in Tehran who didn't like the treaty any more than Donald Trump liked the treaty, they're loving this kind of talk. You see, it's the US that's violating the terms of the treaty. That's a huge problem. Now, I don't happen to think that the US is planning a direct military strike on Iran. I thought that was possible for a while, but I don't think it's true now. But I think we are going to see a major military escalation against Iran in the form of a major US escalation in Yemen. That's going to be the next massive disaster. Yemen is already the poorest country in the region, the poorest country in the Arab world. 80% of its population, because of the Saudi Arabian bombing of Yemen that has been going on for a year and a half, partly bankrolled, fully armed, and militarily backed by the United States, has not only killed 10,000 people, most of them civilians, but it has brought 80% of the population to complete dependency on UN food aid, most of which can't any longer get in because of the Saudi blockade of the only port big enough to allow the aid ships to get in. That's what we have allowed to continue in Yemen. And just today, there's a report from General Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, who has just arrived in Israel to talk about Iran, and I don't think they're talking about how great the nuclear deal is. I don't think they're talking about the need for more diplomacy. I think they're talking about threats. And I think the threats are likely to be realized in Yemen. And that means a lot more dead Yemenis. We're facing a serious challenge here. We just finished 8 years of a president who accomplished some extraordinary things in domestic policy and some extraordinary things in foreign policy. The Obama legacy, if it's not all destroyed, has the potential to go down in history with some really incredible things. The normalization of relations with Cuba, or the moves towards normalization. It's not full normalization yet, but it's well on its way. That was huge. That wasn't easy. The Paris climate talks. That was hugely difficult. The Paris climate talks were not great, let's be clear. The Paris Agreement is not fabulous. But the consequences, if they had not gotten to that point, would have been absolutely catastrophic. So that was hugely important. And it was hard fought. It wasn't easy for the Obama administration. And third and most important was the Iran nuclear deal. That was an enormous victory for diplomacy over war.